The pristine sterility of the operating room was the one place where Dr. Michael Reynolds felt in complete control. Every incision deliberate, every movement precise. For 15 years, he had saved countless lives at Lakeside Memorial Hospital. His skilled hands mending broken hearts, both literally and, in the case of his marriage to Sarah, figuratively. But on the night of October 17th, those same healing hands would become weapons, guided not by medical protocol, but by a rage so profound it would shatter the very oath he had sworn to uphold. First, do no harm. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. Michael Reynolds awoke at 5:30 a.m., as he had done every weekday for the past decade. The pre-dawn darkness still clung to the windows of their Pinewood Hills home, but he moved with practiced efficiency, careful not to disturb Sarah. She slept, facing away from him, her breathing deep and rhythmic. After a quick shower, he dressed in the walk-in closet, adjusting his tie in the mirror. At 45, Michael still maintained his athletic build from his college swimming days, though small wrinkles had begun forming at the corners of his eyes. Downstairs, the coffee maker had automatically started brewing, filling the kitchen with the rich aroma of Colombian beans. Michael prepared his usual breakfast, 2 eggs over easy, whole grain toast, and half an avocado. As he ate, he reviewed his surgery schedule for the day on his tablet. 3 procedures, starting with a double bypass at 7:30. The sound of footsteps on the stairs announced Sarah's arrival. Even in her casual morning state, Sarah Reynolds possessed an effortless grace. At 42, her dark hair cascaded past her shoulders, framing a face that turned heads at every hospital fundraiser. She worked as a pharmaceutical sales representative, a job that perfectly suited her natural charm and intelligence. "You're up early," Michael commented, pouring her a cup of coffee. "Meeting in Westbrook today," she replied, accepting the mug with a smile. New diabetes medication launch. Their morning routine continued with comfortable familiarity. They discussed their schedules, a planned weekend getaway to Lake Geneva, and the ongoing kitchen renovation. From the outside, the Reynolds epitomized success, respected professionals, financially secure, pillars of the Pinewood Hills community. "Don't forget about the hospital gala next Friday," Michael reminded her as he gathered his things. "Dr. Whitmore is retiring, and they're expecting all senior staff to attend." "Already marked on my calendar," Sarah assured him. "I found a dress last weekend." Michael kissed her goodbye, a quick peck on the lips that had become perfunctory. Over the years, neither seemed to notice when their displays of affection had become so mechanical, like completing items on a checklist. The drive to Lakeside Memorial took 12 minutes in light traffic. Michael pulled his Audi into his reserved space and nodded to the security guard as he entered through the staff entrance. The familiar antiseptic smell greeted him, a scent that most found sterile and cold, but that Michael had always associated with purpose and clarity. "Morning, Dr. Reynolds." Emily Chen, the cardiothoracic fellow assigned to his service this month, greeted him in the doctor's lounge. She handed him the patient file for his first case. "Mr. Donovan's labs came back with slightly elevated potassium, but we've adjusted the pre-op protocols." Michael reviewed the file, making small notes in the margins. "Good catch. Let's push back the start time 30 minutes to make sure the levels stabilize." The morning progressed with the ordered precision that defined Michael's professional life. In the operating room, he was renowned for his focus and steady hands. By lunchtime, he had completed 2 surgeries and was reviewing post-op notes when his phone vibrated with a text from Sarah. "Running late tonight. Dinner with regional sales team. Don't wait up." Michael sent a brief acknowledgement and returned to his notes. These late meetings had become more frequent in the past few months. Sales quotas, she had explained, end-of-quarter pushes. He had no reason to question it. "You look like you could use this," Emily said, placing a coffee on his desk. "Black, 1 sugar." "Thanks." Michael smiled appreciatively at his colleague. "What would I do without you?" "Probably still be using paper charts like Dr. Harrison," she joked, referring to one of the older surgeons who resisted technological changes. Emily pulled up a chair beside him. "Are you presenting at the Boston conference next month?" "Yes, our research on minimally invasive valve repair techniques. Sarah's coming along too. She's never been to Boston." "That's nice," Emily said, though something in her tone suggested restraint. "How is Sarah?" Michael glanced up from his computer. "Fine, busy with work." "Why do you ask?" Emily hesitated. "No reason. Just haven't seen her at the hospital functions lately." "The pharmaceutical industry doesn't run on a surgeon's schedule," Michael replied, his tone ending that line of conversation. The remainder of the day followed its usual course. Michael finished his 3rd surgery, conducted rounds, and met with 2 new patients scheduled for procedures later in the week. It was nearly 8 in the evening when he finally left the hospital, the sky already dark. The house was empty when he arrived home. Michael reheated some leftover pasta and ate alone at the kitchen island, scrolling through medical journal articles on his tablet. He considered waiting up for Sarah, but decided against it after checking his schedule for the morning. By the time he climbed into bed at 10:30, Sarah had still not returned. This pattern continued for the next week. Sarah's late nights became more frequent, her explanations briefer. Michael, absorbed in his own demanding schedule, barely registered the growing distance between them. They moved around each other like planets in separate orbits, connected by gravity, but rarely making meaningful contact. Friday night brought the hospital gala at the Pinewood Country Club. Michael arrived early as a member of the organizing committee. The ballroom had been transformed with elegant lighting and floral arrangements. Hospital administrators, doctors, and major donors mingled over cocktails, the gentle hum of conversation punctuated by occasional laughter. "Michael," Dr. Whitmore, the retiring chief of surgery, clapped him on the shoulder. "Just the man I wanted to see. The board's decision should be announced next week, but between us, you're the top candidate for my position." Michael smiled, genuinely pleased. "That's encouraging to hear, sir. I've got big shoes to fill." "Nonsense. You've been ready for years," Whitmore insisted. "Where's that lovely wife of yours?" "She should be arriving shortly." Michael checked his watch, noticing Sarah was already 20 minutes late. As the evening progressed with speeches and dinner, Sarah's absence became increasingly conspicuous. Michael checked his phone repeatedly, but found no messages. He made excuses to colleagues, traffic, last-minute work emergency, but as the gala moved into its 2nd hour, even he couldn't explain her absence. Finally, as dessert was being served, Sarah appeared at the entrance to the ballroom. She looked stunning in a deep blue gown, but Michael immediately noticed something was off. Her movements were slightly unsteady, her smile too broad as she made her way to their table. "I am so sorry," she whispered, kissing Michael's cheek. The faint smell of alcohol mingled with her perfume. "Client meeting ran late, and then traffic was horrible." Michael said nothing, merely nodding as she greeted the others at their table. Throughout the remainder of the evening, he observed her closely. Sarah was engaging and charming as always, but there was a forced quality to her laughter, a slight delay in her responses. They drove home in silence, the tension between them palpable. It wasn't until they were in the bedroom that Michael finally spoke. "What's going on, Sarah?" She paused while removing her earrings. "What do you mean?" "You were an hour late to the most important hospital event of the year. You've been working late almost every night this week, and you've clearly had more than one drink." Sarah sighed, placing her jewelry on the dresser with deliberate care. I told you it was a client meeting. Sometimes these things run long. And the drinking? 2 glasses of wine, Michael. Hardly cause for intervention. Her tone was defensive, almost mocking. This isn't like you, he pressed. Something's changed. Sarah turned to face him, her expression suddenly weary. Nothing's changed. I'm just tired. Can we please not do this tonight? Michael wanted to push further, to break through whatever wall she had erected between them, but years of avoiding conflict won out. Fine. We'll talk tomorrow. But tomorrow came and went without the promised conversation. Sarah left early for a weekend sales conference that Michael couldn't recall her mentioning before. He spent Saturday catching up on journal articles and Sunday playing golf with colleagues. By the time Sarah returned Sunday evening, the moment for confrontation had passed, submerged beneath the approaching week's responsibilities. The following Tuesday, Michael was completing paperwork when Emily entered his office and closed the door behind her. "Do you have a minute?" she asked, her expression unusually serious. Of course. Michael set aside his tablet. "What's on your mind?" Emily sat down, her usual confidence replaced by visible discomfort. "Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story." "This is awkward, and I hope I'm overstepping, but as your friend, I feel I should tell you." Michael leaned forward, concern crossing his features. "Tell me what?" "Last week, I was at St. Mary's Medical Center for a consultation. I saw Sarah there." "Okay," Michael said slowly. "She probably had a meeting with someone in their pharmacy department." Emily shook her head. "She wasn't there for work, Michael. She was with a man, Dr. Thomas Wilson. They seemed intimate." Michael's expression remained neutral, though a muscle twitched in his jaw. "Dr. Wilson is an infectious disease specialist." Yes," Emily confirmed, watching him carefully. "Michael, they were holding hands in the cafeteria. When they left, he had his arm around her waist." A heavy silence filled the office. Michael stared at the wall behind Emily's head, processing this information with the same methodical precision he applied to complex surgical cases. "Thank you for telling me," he finally said, his voice even. "I appreciate your concern." Emily hesitated, clearly wanting to say more, but recognizing his tone as dismissal. "If you need anything..." "I'm fine," Michael assured her with a professional smile that didn't reach his eyes. After Emily left, Michael sat motionless at his desk. The pieces began to arrange themselves in his mind, the late nights, the distraction, the growing emotional distance. But why would Sarah be seeing an infectious disease specialist? And why keep it from him? That evening, Michael arrived home, earlier than usual. The house was quiet. Sarah wasn't due back for hours, according to her text. He stood in their bedroom, looking at the shared space with new eyes. Had she brought someone else here, into their home? Almost without conscious decision, Michael began opening drawers, checking pockets, looking through Sarah's belongings. He felt detached from his actions, as if observing himself from a distance. In her nightstand, behind a stack of magazines, he found a small prescription bottle. The label bore her name and Dr. Thomas Wilson's signature, tenofovir disoproxil, an antiretroviral medication. Michael sat heavily on the edge of the bed, the bottle in his hand. His medical knowledge supplied the information his emotional mind resisted processing. Tenofovir was commonly prescribed for HIV treatment. Sarah was being treated for HIV. The sound of the garage door opening snapped him back to awareness. He quickly replaced the bottle and moved downstairs, composing himself as Sarah entered carrying grocery bags. "You're home early," she commented, seemingly unsurprised. "I thought I'd make that chicken dish you like." Michael took some of the bags from her, maintaining the domestic choreography while his mind whirled. How thoughtful. Let me help. They prepared dinner side by side, a parody of marital harmony. Michael asked about her day, responded appropriately to her questions, all while a singular thought dominated his consciousness. She was hiding something potentially life-threatening from him. After dinner, as Sarah loaded the dishwasher, Michael finally breached the subject. "I ran into Emily Chen today." Sarah didn't look up. "Oh, how is she?" "She mentioned seeing you at St. Mary's last week." The subtle stiffening of Sarah's shoulders was the only indication that his words had registered. "Did she?" "Must have been someone else." "She seemed quite certain," Michael pressed. "Said you were with Dr. Thomas Wilson." Sarah straightened, closing the dishwasher with deliberate care before turning to face him. "And I was wondering why my wife would be meeting with an infectious disease specialist without telling me." A complex array of emotions crossed Sarah's face. Surprise, fear, then resignation. She leaned against the counter, arms crossed defensively across her chest. "It's not what you think," she began. "What exactly do I think, Sarah?" Michael's voice remained calm, clinical almost. "That I'm having an affair." She held his gaze. "Tom is an old friend who happens to be prescribing you antiretroviral medication." Sarah's eyes widened. "You went through my things?" "You lied to me," Michael countered, "about where you've been, who you've been with, and it appears you've been lying about something far more serious." The silence between them stretched taut as a surgical suture. Sarah's eyes filled with tears, but Michael felt oddly removed from her emotional display. "I was going to tell you," she finally said, her voice barely above a whisper. "When?" Michael asked. "After I contracted HIV? Or were you being careful to make sure that didn't happen?" "It's not like that," Sarah protested. "Please let me explain." "By all means." Michael gestured to the kitchen table. "Explain why my wife has been secretly receiving treatment for an infectious disease without informing her husband. A husband who, I might add, has been intimate with her and could be infected himself." Sarah sank into a chair, her composure crumbling. "Tom and I dated in college, before you and I met. We reconnected at a pharmaceutical conference 3 months ago, and you've been seeing him since then," Michael finished for her. "No, yes, but not in the way you think." Sarah pushed her hair back from her face. "We had dinner once, that's all. He mentioned he had specialized in infectious diseases. I confided in him about some symptoms I'd been having. Fatigue, recurring infections. He suggested testing off the record." Michael listened impassively, his surgeon's detachment serving him well. "The test came back positive 6 weeks ago," Sarah continued, her voice breaking. "I couldn't believe it. I made him run it twice. I've only ever been with you since we married, Michael. I swear it." "Then how did this happen?" Michael's tone remained eerily calm. Sarah shook her head helplessly. "I don't know. Maybe before we met. It can stay dormant for years. Or there was that needle stick injury at work last year, remember? The client with the sample packet?" Michael remembered. Sarah had come home upset after accidentally pricking herself with a needle during a demonstration. She had filed an incident report, followed protocol. "You reported that," he said. "There would have been testing." "Yes, but sometimes tests can give false negatives early on." She reached for his hand across the table, but he pulled back slightly. "Michael, I was scared. I didn't know how to tell you. So instead, you confided in your ex-boyfriend and started treatment without a word to me." The first edge of anger crept into his voice. "Do you understand what this means? I need to be tested immediately. I could be carrying the virus without knowing it. I could have transmitted it to others through my work." "Tom said the risk was low with the medication I'm on," Sarah said. "And we've been careful recently." Michael gave a humorless laugh. "Careful? Yes, I've noticed the sudden headaches, the early nights. I thought it was just the natural cooling of a long marriage. Instead, it was you protecting me without my knowledge or consent. I was trying to figure out how to tell you, Sarah insisted, tears streaming down her face now. I was terrified you would react exactly like this, thinking I betrayed you somehow. Didn't you? Michael stood abruptly. Not by contracting HIV. That could indeed be an unfortunate accident, but by hiding it from me for 6 weeks, by consulting with an ex-boyfriend instead of your husband, by putting my health, my career, my entire life at risk. Michael, please, I need to get tested, immediately. He walked to the door, grabbing his car keys. I suggest you use this time to consider what else you might be hiding from me. Where are you going? Sarah asked, panic edging into her voice. To the hospital. I can run the test myself. At this hour? Michael, please, let's talk about this. But Michael was already closing the door behind him, her pleas fading as he walked to his car with measured steps. His mind, usually so ordered and precise, buzzed with chaotic thoughts. He drove to the hospital on autopilot, his surgical training keeping his hands steady on the wheel despite the emotional earthquake rippling through his consciousness. In the deserted laboratory of Lakeside Memorial, Michael drew his own blood with practiced ease. His hands didn't shake as he prepared the sample for testing, labeling it with a numerical code rather than his name. No one needed to know, not yet, not until he had facts rather than fears. As he completed the procedure, placing the sample in the processing queue for the morning shift, a strange calm settled over him. Whatever the results, his life had already irrevocably changed. The foundation of trust upon which he had built. 15 years of marriage had fractured. Whether it could be repaired remained to be seen. Michael spent the night in his office, staring out at the lights of Pinewood Hills, considering his options with the same methodical approach he would use for a difficult diagnosis. By dawn, he had reached a decision. The Boston conference would be his opportunity. Sarah would accompany him as planned. There, away from their routine and community, he would confront her with the full truth, whatever that might be, and determine whether their marriage could survive this breach of trust. What Michael didn't yet know was that his test results would arrive the next morning, setting in motion a chain of events that would transform him from a respected healer into something altogether different. And Sarah's secret, the one she was still keeping, would prove far more devastating than anything he had imagined during that long, sleepless night. The Boston Medical Conference loomed 3 days away. Michael moved through his duties at Lakeside Memorial with mechanical precision, his thoughts detached from his actions. In the operating room, he remained flawless, his hands steady, his decisions swift and correct. But colleagues noticed the change in him. The easy smile was gone, replaced by a tight-lipped expression that discouraged conversation. Your HIV test came back negative, Emily told him privately in his office, sliding the results across his desk. She had processed the sample herself after recognizing his coding system. But you should retest in 3 months to be certain. Michael nodded, pocketing the paper without comment. The negative result should have brought relief, but instead, it only deepened his sense of betrayal. Sarah had kept her condition secret for 6 weeks. 6 weeks during which he could have been infected. At home, an uneasy truce had settled between them. They occupied the same space but barely spoke beyond necessary exchanges. Sarah had tried several times to initiate a deeper conversation, but Michael deflected each attempt. "We'll discuss everything in Boston," was his repeated response. "Not here, not now." On Wednesday evening, as Michael packed for the conference, Sarah stood in the doorway of their bedroom watching him. "I've made an appointment for you with Tom," she said, "for a full screening. I thought it might be easier than going through your hospital." Michael folded a dress shirt with deliberate care. "You continue to make decisions for me without consultation. Michael, please, I'm trying to make this right." He looked up at her, really seeing her for the first time in days. She appeared smaller somehow, her confidence diminished. Dark circles shadowed her eyes, and her complexion had taken on a sallow quality that his clinical mind immediately recognized as a potential symptom of medication side effects. "I've already been tested," he said finally. It came back negative. Relief flooded Sarah's face. "Thank God." "Yes," Michael agreed, though his tone lacked gratitude. "God has been very selective about who suffers in this scenario." Sarah flinched as if struck. "I deserve that, but Michael, I never meant to hurt you." Intentions and outcomes rarely align perfectly. He zipped his suitcase closed. "Our flight leaves at 10 a.m. tomorrow. I suggest we both get some rest." That night, lying in bed with Sarah beside him, yet impossibly distant, Michael stared at the ceiling and contemplated the 15 years they had shared. The early days of their relationship had been incandescent. Weekends spent barely leaving their apartment, ambitious plans made over cheap wine, the thrill of building a life together. When had that passion cooled into comfortable routine? When had they stopped truly seeing each other? Thursday morning dawned crisp and clear. The flight to Boston passed in stilted silence, Sarah pretending to read a novel while Michael reviewed his presentation. They checked into the Copley Plaza Hotel, where the conference was being held, and separated to attend different sessions. "Dinner at 7, Michael suggested as they parted in the lobby. "The restaurant on the second floor." Sarah nodded, something like hope flickering in her eyes. "I'll be there." Michael's presentation on minimally invasive valve repair techniques was well received, earning respectful questions from colleagues and an invitation to collaborate from a cardiologist at Johns Hopkins. In another time, another life, he would have been elated. Instead, he moved through the professional interactions like an actor following a script. At 7 sharp, Michael sat at a corner table in the hotel restaurant, a glass of scotch before him. Sarah arrived 5 minutes later, looking elegant in a simple black dress. She had applied makeup with careful attention, but it couldn't fully disguise the fatigue etched into her features. "You did well today," she said after ordering a club soda. "I slipped into the back of your session." "Thank you." Michael took a measured sip of his drink. "Sarah, we need to talk about what happens next." She tensed visibly. "I know. I've been thinking about this constantly," he continued. "About us, about trust, about our future. And I need the whole truth. Not just about the HIV diagnosis, but everything, starting with Thomas Wilson." Sarah's fingers played nervously with her napkin. "I told you, Tom and I dated in college. It ended before I met you. When we reconnected at the conference, it was purely coincidental. Yet you turned to him with your health concerns instead. Of me, why? He's a specialist in infectious diseases," Sarah said, "and I was embarrassed, scared. I didn't want to worry you until I knew for sure." "And after you knew for sure," Michael pressed, his voice low but intense. 6 weeks, Sarah, 6 weeks where you put me at risk without my knowledge." "The risk was minimal with medication," she insisted. "Tom assured me." "Tom?" Michael interrupted. "Always Tom, your medical confidant, your secret keeper. Are you sleeping with him?" Sarah's eyes widened. "No, God, no, Michael. There's been no one but you since the day we met." "Then explain something to me." Michael leaned forward. "If the needle stick at work was the source, why didn't the company's mandatory testing protocol uncatch it?" Sarah's gaze dropped to the table. "I don't know. Maybe the testing was flawed. Or maybe," Michael continued, his tone deadly calm, "there's another explanation, one you're still hiding from me." The waiter arrived with their appetizers, momentarily halting the conversation. When he departed, Sarah picked up her fork, but made no move to eat. "Tell me about your life before me," Michael said. Sarah looked up, confusion crossing her features. "You know about my life before you." "Do I? I know you grew up in Seattle, attended Washington State, worked for a small pharmaceutical company before joining your current firm. I know you had 2 serious relationships before me, but I'm beginning to wonder how much I don't know." Sarah set down her fork. "What are you suggesting?" Michael pulled a folded paper from his jacket pocket and placed it on the table between them. "I found this in your desk while looking for our travel documents." Sarah stared at the paper but didn't touch it. "You went through my desk. It's a letter from Pinehurst Recovery Center, dated 12 years ago, congratulating you on 6 months of sobriety." The color drained from Sarah's face. "Michael, you told me you stopped drinking after college because you didn't like how it made you feel. You never mentioned rehabilitation for substance abuse." His voice remained steady, clinical almost. "What else don't I know about your past?" Sarah's hand trembled as she reached for her water glass. "It was before we met. I didn't think it mattered anymore." "It matters now," Michael said, "because it establishes a pattern of concealment." "What else, Sarah? What else have you hidden from me that might suddenly become relevant to our lives?" Tears welled in her eyes. "Nothing important. I don't believe you." Michael's words fell between them like stones. "I think there's more, and I think it's connected to your HIV status." The restaurant continued its elegant hum around them, other diners oblivious to the devastation occurring at their corner table. Sarah sat frozen, trapped in the web of her own making. "During my residency," Michael continued, "I treated a young woman who had contracted HIV from sharing needles. She'd been clean for years, married, built a new life, but the virus remained dormant until stress triggered a cascade of symptoms." Sarah's tears spilled over, tracking silently down her cheeks. "Is that what happened, Sarah? Was there a period of intravenous drug use you never told me about?" She nodded almost imperceptibly. "Yes," she whispered, "in college, after my father died, for about 8 months. And you never got tested in all these years?" "I did, early on. It was negative." Sarah's voice strengthened slightly. "I thought I was safe. I've been tested for routine physicals and insurance, always negative. Until now," she echoed. "Michael, I swear I didn't know. As soon as I found out, I started treatment. I've been careful with you." Michael regarded her, this woman he had thought he knew completely. 15 years of marriage, and still discovering fundamental truths about her past, her choices, her very identity. "I believe you didn't intentionally expose me," he said finally. "But the deception, all these years of hiding parts of yourself that was deliberate." "I was ashamed," Sarah admitted. "I wanted to be the person you thought I was, not who I had been." "But they're the same person, Sarah. You can't compartmentalize your life and expect no consequences." Michael pushed back his untouched plate. "I need some air. Excuse me." He walked through the hotel lobby and out onto the street, the cool Boston evening enveloping him. The city pulsed with activity, taxis honking, pedestrians hurrying past, the distant wail of an ambulance. Life continuing as normal while his own had fractured beyond recognition. Michael walked without direction, his mind churning. The profound sense of betrayal was not just about the HIV diagnosis or even the hidden drug use. It was the realization that the woman he had devoted his life to had never fully existed. She was a carefully constructed facade with vital parts deliberately concealed. After an hour of aimless wandering, Michael found himself back at the hotel. In their room, Sarah sat on the edge of the bed, her face ravaged by tears, but composed now. "There's something else," she said as he closed the door behind him. Something I need to tell you." Michael remained standing, bracing himself. "Go on." "The company is investigating the needle stick incident. They think it may not have been an accident." Sarah's voice was barely audible. "Tom believes someone deliberately contaminated the sample." Michael stared at her in disbelief. "What are you saying?" "There's a former colleague, someone I worked with in Seattle, Marcus Delaney. He was obsessed with me. When I transferred to the Pinewood Hills office, he followed, got a job with a competing firm." Sarah drew a shaky breath. 3 months ago, he approached me at a conference, said we were meant to be together, that you were keeping us apart. And you think this man infected a pharmaceutical sample with HIV to what? Punish you? Drive us apart? The absurdity of it struck Michael as almost laughable. "It sounds crazy, I know, but Marcus has history. Restraining orders from 2 other women, and he knew about my past, threatened to expose it if I didn't leave you." Sarah looked up at him, her expression pleading. "I was going to tell you everything after I was certain, after I had proof." Michael sank into the chair by the window, suddenly exhausted. "Why didn't you go to the police? With what evidence? A suspicion, a threatening conversation that no one else heard?" Sarah shook her head. "Tom has contacts at the CDC. They're investigating discreetly." "Tom again," Michael murmured. "Always Tom." "He's been helping me because I asked him to," Sarah said defensively. "There's nothing between us, except your complete trust, apparently." Michael regarded her with detached curiosity. "Something you couldn't extend to your husband?" The silence stretched between them. 15 years of shared history suddenly insufficient to bridge the chasm. "I'd like to believe you," Michael said finally, "about all of it, but I don't know if I can." "What can I do?" Sarah asked, desperation edging her voice. "How do I fix this?" "I don't know that you can." Michael stood, decision crystallizing. In his mind, "I'm going back to Pinewood Hills tomorrow. I think we need some time apart while I process all this." "Michael, please. It's not negotiable, Sarah." His tone was final. "Stay for the rest of the conference if you want. I'll see about getting you a separate room." That night, they slept in the same bed for the last time, backs turned to each other, separated by mere inches and insurmountable distance. Michael awoke before dawn, his surgeon's internal clock unaffected by emotional turmoil. In the dim light filtering through the curtains, he studied Sarah's sleeping face. Even now, knowing what he knew, he felt the pull of their shared history, the memory of happier times, of laughter and passion and quiet companionship. He packed silently and left a note on the desk informing her he had changed his flight. As he closed the hotel room door behind him, Michael felt a strange lightness. The decision had been made. The path forward, while painful, was clear. The early flight to Pinewood Hills gave Michael time to think, to plan. By the time the plane touched down, he had arranged an extended leave of absence from the hospital, citing family emergency. He had contacted a real estate agent about listing their house. He had made an appointment with a divorce attorney for the following week. The empty house greeted him with familiar sounds, the hum of the refrigerator, the ticking of the grandfather clock in the hallway. Michael moved through the rooms like a visitor, seeing everything with new eyes. The framed photos of their life together, vacations, anniversaries, hospital galas, now seemed like artifacts from a fiction, a story he had believed was real. In his study, Michael opened his laptop and began methodically transferring funds to a separate account. Not everything, he wasn't vindictive, but enough to start over somewhere new. As he worked, his phone buzzed repeatedly with messages from Sarah. He silenced it without reading them. Night fell, and still Michael sat at his desk, immersed in the practicalities of dismantling a life. It was nearly midnight when he heard her key in the lock. He hadn't expected her back so soon. Michael? Sarah's voice called from the entryway. Are you home? He remained silent, listening to her footsteps moving through the house, coming closer. When she appeared in the doorway of his study, he noticed she looked worse than before. Pale, unsteady, on her feet. You shouldn't have come back early, he said. After an hour of aimless wandering, Michael found himself back at the hotel. In their room, Sarah sat on the edge of the bed, her face ravaged by tears, but composed now. There's something else, she said as he closed the door behind him. Something I need to tell you. Michael remained standing, bracing himself. Go on. The company is investigating the needle stick incident. They think it may not have been an accident. Sarah's voice was barely audible. Tom believes someone deliberately contaminated the sample. Michael stared at her in disbelief. What are you saying? There's a former colleague, someone I worked with in Seattle, Marcus Delaney. He was obsessed with me. When I transferred to the Pinewood Hills office, he followed, got a job with a competing firm. Sarah drew a shaky breath. 3 months ago, he approached me at a conference, said we were meant to be together, that you were keeping us apart. And you think this man infected a pharmaceutical sample with HIV to what? Punish you? Drive us apart? The absurdity of it struck Michael as almost laughable. It sounds crazy, I know, but Marcus has history. Restraining, orders from 2 other women, and he knew about my past, threatened to expose it if I didn't leave you. Sarah looked up at him, her expression pleading. I was going to tell you everything after I was certain, after I had proof. Michael sank into the chair by the window, suddenly exhausted. Why didn't you go to the police? With what evidence? A suspicion? A threatening conversation that no one else heard? Sarah shook her head. Tom has contacts at the CDC. They're investigating discreetly. Tom again, Michael murmured. Always Tom. He's been helping me because I asked him to, Sarah said defensively. There's nothing between us. Except your complete trust, apparently. Michael regarded her with detached curiosity. Something you couldn't extend to your husband. The silence stretched between them. 15 years of shared history suddenly insufficient to bridge the chasm. I'd like to believe you, Michael said finally, about all of it, but I don't know if I can. What can I do? Sarah asked, desperation edging her voice. How do I fix this? I don't know that you can. Michael stood, decision crystallizing. In his mind, I'm going back to Pinewood Hills tomorrow. I think we need some time apart while I process all this. Michael, please, it's not negotiable, Sarah. His tone was final. Stay for the rest of the conference if you want. I'll see about getting you a separate room. That night, they slept in the same bed for the last time. Backs turned to each other, separated by mere inches and insurmountable distance. Michael awoke before dawn, his surgeon's internal clock unaffected by emotional turmoil. In the dim light filtering through the curtains, he studied Sarah's sleeping face. Even now, knowing what he knew, he felt the pull of their shared history, the memory of happier times, of laughter and passion and quiet companionship. He packed silently and left a note on the desk informing her he had changed his flight. As he closed the hotel room door behind him, Michael felt a strange lightness. The decision had been made. The path forward, while painful, was clear. The early flight to Pinewood Hills gave Michael time to think, to plan. By the time the plane touched down, he had arranged an extended leave of absence from the hospital, citing family emergency. He had contacted a real estate agent about listing their house. He had made an appointment with a divorce attorney for the following week. The empty house greeted him with familiar sounds, the hum of the refrigerator, the ticking of the grandfather clock in the hallway. Michael moved through the rooms like a visitor, seeing everything with new eyes. The framed photos of their life together, vacations, anniversaries, hospital galas, now seemed like artifacts from a fiction, a story he had believed was real. In his study, Michael opened his laptop and began methodically transferring funds to a separate account. Not everything, he wasn't vindictive, but enough to start over somewhere new. As he worked, his phone buzzed repeatedly with messages from Sarah. He silenced it without reading them. Night fell, and still Michael sat at his desk, immersed in the practicalities of dismantling a life. It was nearly midnight when he heard her key in the lock. He hadn't expected her back so soon. "Michael," Sarah's voice called from the entryway. "Are you home?" He remained silent, listening to her footsteps moving through the house, coming closer. When she appeared in the doorway of his study, he noticed she looked worse than before, pale, unsteady, on her feet. "You shouldn't have come back early," he said. "I had to." Sarah stepped into the room. "We need to talk about this rationally." "I am being rational." Michael closed his laptop. "I'm making necessary arrangements." "Arrangements?" Sarah's voice rose. "Michael, you can't just throw away 15 years of marriage because of one mistake." "One mistake?" He laughed humorlessly. "Sarah, you concealed your drug history from me for our entire relationship. You hid your HIV diagnosis for 6 weeks. You consulted your ex-boyfriend instead of your husband about a life-threatening condition. These aren't mistakes, they're choices. I was trying to protect you." Sarah moved closer, swaying slightly. "Everything I did was to keep you safe." "Safe from what? The truth?" Michael stood, maintaining distance between them. "That's not protection, Sarah. That's manipulation." "You don't understand," she insisted, her words slurring faintly. "There's more to this than you know." Michael noticed her pallor had worsened, beads of sweat forming on her forehead, despite the cool temperature of the room. "Are you all right?" "No," Sarah admitted, gripping the edge of his desk for support. "I don't feel well. The new medication. Side effects." "Sit down," Michael ordered, medical training overriding personal resentment. "When did this start?" "On the plane." Sarah sank into a chair. "Getting worse." Michael pressed his fingers to her wrist, counting her pulse, rapid, thready. Her skin was hot to the touch, dry. "You need to go to the hospital," he said. "These aren't normal medication side effects." "No hospitals," Sarah protested weakly. "Can't risk exposure. Professional reputation." "This isn't up for debate." Michael reached for his phone. "I'm calling an ambulance." "No!" Sarah's hand shot out, grabbing his wrist with surprising strength. "Please, Michael, just help me upstairs. I need to rest. If I'm not better by morning, we'll go to St. Mary's. Tom will know what to do." The mention of Tom reignited Michael's anger, but concern for Sarah's deteriorating condition won out. "Fine. But if your symptoms worsen, we're going to the emergency room. Reputation be damned." He helped her to their bedroom, supporting most of her weight as they climbed the stairs. Sarah collapsed onto the bed, her breathing labored. "Water," she whispered, "and my medication in my purse." Michael retrieved her purse from downstairs, rifling through it until he found a small pill case. Inside were several different medications, each in a separate compartment labeled with times of day. He filled a glass with water and returned to the bedroom. "Which ones?" he asked, showing her the pill case. Sarah pointed weakly to 2 compartments. Michael handed her the pills and helped her drink. As he arranged pillows behind her, his doctor's mind catalogued her symptoms. Rapid pulse, fever, disorientation, weakness, possible drug interaction, infection, progression of the HIV. "I'm going to take your temperature," he told her, retrieving the digital thermometer from the bathroom. The reading, 103. 2 confirmed his suspicions. This was serious. "Sarah, I'm calling the hospital," he said firmly. "This isn't something to wait out." But Sarah had already drifted into a fitful sleep, her face flushed with fever. Michael watched her for a moment, conflict raging within him. Part of him, the betrayed husband, wanted to walk away, to let her face the consequences of her choices. But the larger part, the doctor, the man who had once loved her completely, couldn't abandon her in this state. He went downstairs to call the hospital, already planning what to tell them, how to protect her privacy while ensuring she received proper care. But as he reached for his phone, his gaze fell on her open purse, and something caught his eye. A small notebook, leather-bound, had partially slipped out. Michael hesitated only briefly before pulling it free. It was wrong to invade her privacy further, he knew. But hadn't her secrets already poisoned their life together? He opened the notebook to find it was a journal, dated entries in Sarah's distinctive handwriting. The most recent entry was from 2 days before, written in Boston. M still doesn't know the whole truth. How could I tell him? The needle stick was a convenient explanation, but if he ever discovers what really happened with Marcus that night at the hotel. Tom says the treatment is working, but I'm so tired all the time. Tired of the lies, tired of pretending. Maybe it would be better to just tell M everything, face the consequences, but I can't bear to see the look in his eyes when he learns what I've done. Michael stared at the words, the final piece of the puzzle clicking into place with devastating clarity. There had been no obsessed colleague contaminating samples, no professional conspiracy. The truth was simpler, more primal. Sarah had been unfaithful. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.